Ever had a conversation where you made a bold statement, then paused, tilted your head, and said, "On second thought"? Welcome to On Second Thought with Erick, Richey, and Bish Bates, where hot takes meet humble pivots, where leadership, life, and current events collide, and where it's perfectly fine to change your mind, out loud. Whether it's marriage, manhood, or the madness in the media, Erick and Bish bring humor, heart, and a little healthy debate, because wisdom lives on the other side of, "Wait, let me rethink that." This is On Second Thought. Press play and be ready to pause.
Hey, Erick, how's it going, man?
It's going well, man. Another long week. How about yourself?
It's been good. Long week as well. Been a rough long week at work, but still pretty good. So still pretty good.
If it wasn't rough, they'd call playtime instead of work time, I guess, huh?
This is true. This is why we get paid the extra medium bucks, right? The stuff that we have to, not big bucks at all, but
Not
the
the
extra
big bucks.
medium, the extra
Yes,
medium
sir.
bucks. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
So I understand. Oh, by the way, what are we drinking today? What are you drinking today, sir?
It's a little concoction of some vodka, amaretto, and a splash of limoncello. So
Okay, so you definitely went sweet today, because
I went a little sweeter this morning. Yes.
yeah, amaretto and limoncello is definitely two sweet additions.
Just drops in there to add a little something to the vodka.
Well, so I have here it is right here. I'm trying to put it up there. I have
Oh, that's different.
yeah, so I have vodka. It's really strong, not flavored vodka.
That doesn't sound like you at all.
Yeah, so it's pineapple vodka. So anyway, so pineapple vodka, a little bit of coconut rum, and then orange juice. So everything is sweet in mine. So
Yeah, that sounds like it. And my wife just asked for coconut rum the other day, so I gotta go check that out. 'Cause I remember I used to have some from when you came and visited, and yet we never opened it when you were here. And I
oh
got that
really?
specifically for you. And it's gone.
I appreciate that. I appreciate the getting the coconut rum just for me, man. I don't hate on it all. I was out with some friends yesterday, and I ordered something super sweet off the menu, and we had a whole conversation about whether or not I should be ashamed of the sweetness of my drinks. And I was like, nope,
You own it.
I
You
own
own
it.
it. Yeah.
I know who I am, and I'm comfortable with who I am. So.
Well, you were a little bit later in life when you started drinking too, also. I mean, I remember I used to take you out to Atlantic City, and you weren't a big connoisseur of drinks, but you started trying the sweeter ones at that time. So yeah.
Yes, that's what I did. So, excuse me. So yeah, so and by the way, we were talking about you're changing your location. God gummit this daggum.
Your computer's so fancy, it moves when you do. Just like that. Nope. Back it out. Back it out.
All right, that's good.
How fancy
I got to
that
stop
is.
doing hand motions. I can't talk with my hands anymore with this daggum camera. We were talking. Let's see, my hand went up. We were talking about the changing your location because you were facing the light or something. You were facing the
Yeah,
the
my
back of
back
the
was to
windows.
the light. Yeah, my back was to the windows. So I like this a little bit more. Plus, I'm interviewing for a job that will be remote, work from home,
Mm,
and the interview on Tuesday will be a Zoom video.
okay.
So I wanted to have a better aesthetic as well. Plus, this opens up to the house a little bit better. I can see things a little bit more as well. So.
Is this in the same office?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. When you walk in the door on the right side. So I just
This
did.
is definitely a better look, by the way, just for the record. I don't know what you did
Thank you.
before, but this is
Yeah.
you clearly are upping your game on what your background should look like. Because
Thank you.
the other one, I was like, why would you ever put your back to one? I would want to look out the window. That's just me.
Right.
But two, having a light source behind you is always sort of a bad idea.
So the reason that the room was set up before was my stepdaughter was going to be moving in. And we had a couch in the guest room that we were going to move out, and we had to find a place to put it because it was new. And it was one of those pull-out beds as well. So the only place it would fit would be in the office. So we arranged things to fit better for that. None of that happened a while ago. We made that adjustment, and the couch never ended up coming out of the room. So it just stuck, mostly because I'm lazy and don't want to move a very heavy desk. But
I understand.
this aesthetic seems to work out a little bit better. So
Oh, good. And so I assume you made Berna move the desk this time, so to flip it around. I assume that's what happened, because
actually,
we know
I
who the
got
man of the house is, and their first name does not
no.
start with E.
As the man of the house, I made the move on my own. I set up the pictures and frames on my own, but then I did go upstairs and ask her to check it out and get her approval.
You got her approval.
Everything
Okay.
I did was
How did
correct.
it
So
look?
yeah,
Yeah,
that
did it
I
look
did do the
okay?
move, and she's like, "Why didn't you ask me to help?" But I first, I'd rather ask for forgiveness than permission sometimes.
Okay. All right.
So yeah, but I did do the move. I was willing to move it back if she did not like the look of it, but she did.
Okay.
So.
Are you, by the
Yeah.
way, are you I see you have your Dallas shirt on. Are you optimistic
Ready
that you
for the
guys
game.
will not suck this week?
Well, I mean, against the Giants, I'd be very embarrassed if we did, but we have a great record against them. I think we've won the last 13 games we played against them. And even with the new quarterback, Sierra's husband, um,
What?
Sierra's husband is the
Oh, you
quarterback of the
Russell
Giants.
Wilson.
Yeah,
Honestly, I was
I
thinking
might
you were
be.
talking about Dak Prescott, and I was like, Dak. Why
No,
are you mentioning
no,
Dak
no, no,
Prescott's
no, no,
wife?
no,
Okay,
no.
I
Even
got you.
with the new quarterback for the Giants, being a veteran, who's won a Super Bowl.
Long
I'm
time
not
ago.
worried. I'm not worried because after that performance against Washington,
That was rough. That was definitely a rough. He's going to be on a struggle bus, man, for real. So he doesn't have a good offense
unfortunate,
with him.
unfortunate, because I thought he was going to be the one that would drive it
No,
for the
he's been
next.
on the down slope for a while now. I think
Yeah,
we thought that maybe Seattle sort of cut him too soon. He struggled
right.
in Denver, and then he struggled in, I think it was Pittsburgh last year. And so
Yeah.
I just think he's just on the downside of his career. No disrespect to him. He was a great quarterback during his prime. Like you
hmm
said, won a Super Bowl and maybe went to another one or something. But either way, he was good. He was good. And so,
Yeah. I think it. People are just playing past their prime more and more. And
yeah,
I think sometimes they're not knowing when to get off the
that's because
train
everybody
just
thinks they're
because,
Tom Brady.
yeah,
Like you're not.
yeah.
Everybody's not Tom
So
Brady. By the way, Favre looked not Favre. Rodgers looked good
Rodgers looked
in
good,
in this
surrounded by the
game, but
right
I
people.
still don't.
Yeah.
I don't know that can be sustained.
I don't think it's going to be solid through the year. I don't think he's going to
Right.
make it through the
Right.
year. At that age, getting hit, I just don't think it's a thing. But you could tell he was playing for some pride last week because that's all he talked about is like, this goes against, the entire Jets. Anyone that ever touches the Jets, it's like people were coming up giving him love after the game, man. You don't have to be that angry. Like some of the people over there
That's who he is.
should. So,
He's mad
yeah,
salty. He's mad salty and
yeah.
cantankerous, man. And for a guy who's rich and not all that old and successful, he is a very sort of cantankerous human being. So it's
Yeah, and
unfortunate.
I think people used to think he was very humble. When maybe he started out, he was humble, but maybe
I
that
don't
was
know.
just a persona.
Did that ayahuasca or that went into the deep? Didn't he do something where he went into the darkness for a while? I don't know.
Yeah,
He
yeah,
did
he had a
something. Either way,
yeah,
he's
solitary.
been
Put himself in solitaire to think things out and not be surrounded by voices. I mean, definitely, I think he's morphed into something different than he was. At
yeah,
least the persona that he put
yeah.
out, and if you don't talk a lot to the press, you can put out any persona you want.
Yeah, I think he only talked to
So
what was that the guy who's now on ESPN who had a podcast that he was on all the time. Big, I forget the guy's name, but
yeah.
anyway,
But
but
anyway,
yeah,
so yeah, so regardless, I think yeah, I mean he's older, he's trying to prove something. Again, I don't think he's gonna make it through the year. I don't think Russell is I just don't think he's the same guy, unfortunately. But I am feeling confident. You guys, let me ask you a question.
wait, before you move off of Russell though, something to keep
Yeah,
in mind is even if his career continues to go down, he will still always be married to Sierra. He still
Sierra.
has won the
That's
lottery there. You know what I'm saying? Because
yeah,
it's
yeah.
my wife first, my wife and your wife first and second, and for tied for first, and then Sierra
Right, right,
second
right.
after
Yeah,
that. Like
I
that's
agree with that. Yeah,
and
that's
then
Sierra.
Beyonce.
Yeah, so
So yeah, I'm sorry.
yeah.
Go ahead. What were you gonna say? I
Halle
just
Berry after that.
I
Is
just need
that
to make
right?
sure.
So
I just need to make sure. My wife watches podcasts. She doesn't think that I
yes.
said anybody else is better than her. So
No.
you're
I
first,
heard
and
our
I don't want to get in trouble
wives.
with your wife either. So yeah,
Right. I appreciate
tied
that
for
too.
number
So
one, Berna,
yeah,
Berna,
yeah,
Terica,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
and then everybody else. So
Yes.
good. What
In
were you
that
gonna say?
area. So moving on to you saw your Baltimore game because I hate it when I result for you before you, because you record games sometimes, and I don't know this, and I'll be like texting you like, can you believe that happened? And you're like, I don't know what's going on. I'm at this event right now. I am not seeing anything. So let me ask you, what hurts worse? Does it hurt losing by 2 points, or does it hurt losing by 3 touchdowns?
It hurts losing by with the Ravens. It hurts losing by 2 points, and here's why: because we have a pretty reasonable history, right? I tell people all the time, when people show you who they are, believe them. When teams show you who they are, believe them. Yeah. What the Ravens have shown, and I'm a Ravens fan. I'm not like hating on them. I'm not, but they have shown that they can look good early and fade late, both from a season standpoint, right? When you think about the season to the playoffs and in games, they look good, and then all of a sudden they just can't sustain it, right? And so I look at that. I honestly, and as much as I am a John Harbaugh fan, it shows that you can execute things in a certain way, and somehow either the other team is making adjustments that you're not adjusting to, or you're not doing things the same way in the latter half of seasons and games that made you successful. That you're called. I don't know what it is. I would just say that the players have shown that they can do it. I think it's a coaching thing where the coach has to sort of figure out how do you maintain that momentum that you've created in the first part of the games? How do you maintain that momentum you've created in the first part of the season to maintain that through the end of the game and through the end of the season and through the playoffs? Because that's what we struggle with. And I don't know, because we were enforcing our will upon Buffalo for the first 3 quarters or so. And then all of a sudden it just went. And honestly, I was at the game. So I went to a watch party at the Ravens Stadium, at M&T Bank Stadium. Like Erick,
how does that work? How do you have a watch party inside the stadium instead of watching the game?
They all, by the way, the Dallas Cowboys Stadium, I forget what it's called, but the Dallas Cowboys Stadium would be the best because they have that super big one in the middle. But the Ravens have big screens on the end. So you're just watching the screens on the end. That's all. So you're there with other people. Okay. You can have the food.
Standing room only type of situation. Yeah.
No, wait, say again?
Standing room only situation?
No. We have seats. You're sitting in the seats. Yeah, you're
okay.
sitting in the seats. You're sitting in the stadium.
Yeah, we have standing room only at AT&T Stadium, the Cowboys Stadium. We have standing room only. It's crazy. Yeah.
No, so we're sitting in the seats, and the truth is that it was only, I would say, a third, 40%, probably 40% of the stadium was allowed to be seated. Was used, I should say. Like half the stadium was not used, so only like 40%. One side was used.
What does that mean?
Like you couldn't sit anywhere. You were limited to where you could sit. And so about 40% of the stadium was essentially completely full, but that was it. There was no seating in the other parts of the stadium. They were very limited. Then they only expanded at some point later because folks were complaining that they couldn't find seats. Like large groups 10 people would come in, as the game was starting and they couldn't find seats together. And so they started, I was watching them fuss with the organizers or the what do you call it, the ushers or whatever. And so at some point they opened up a couple of additional sections, but for the most part, about 30 to 40% of the stadium was available. And that's also because that's where all the vendors and so were. They didn't want to have all the vendors in the entire stadium open. They just kept the vendors in that area, which was bad because the lines were crazy long. Anyway, so I went to a watch party and I left in the third quarter. At the end of the third quarter.
You were at a watch party because they weren't playing at home in Baltimore.
Yes, correct.
Now I understand what you're saying. Now I get it. I'm like, I thought they were at the stadium. Yeah. And what do you mean a watch party at the?
By the way, I think all places should do that, right? I think that's an amazing thing because it's less expensive. It's only $10 for each ticket, but you get to go to the stadium. You get to have a little bit of an experience. You get to be with other fans, right? You get to buy overpriced drinks and food, although I didn't buy any food because the lines were crazy long. I'm like, I'm not waiting in a half-hour line, but but it was nice. We chose to do it because it was an option. I think a lot of places could make some money doing it if they don't do it right now. But we left at the end of the third quarter because it was a Sunday night and I had to go to work in the morning, right? And so we're old people, we need sleep. And so we left at the end of the third quarter. We're like, we're good. And I watched it on my phone, on the way home and then at home. And I just couldn't believe the collapse that we were. I mean, it was just unbelievable. I sat there with like my mouth, slack jawed. I just could not believe how they were letting this go. I don't know. And I'm a huge fan of look. The one person, a couple of people I won't blame. I won't blame Lamar Jackson. I think he did what he was supposed to do. I won't blame Derrick Henry. Derrick Henry had an amazing game. Like he did good. Yeah, he had a fumble, but you know what? He doesn't fumble often, and it's going to happen every so often. So we can't blame that on him. It was untimely because it was at the end of a game when another team was trying to come back. But he did his thing. Derrick Henry did his thing. So many of the players, Zay Flowers did his thing. So many players did their thing, and yet somehow we let them come back. And so we have to figure that out. And I heard that Roquan Smith and Kyle Hamilton, who are sort of the leaders of the defense, had a players only dinner or meal or something like that, where they got all them together to say we got to be better, because they do need to be better. And I think that we have to recognize. I think what we think as Ravens fans is that we are a defensive team, and now we have Lamar and Derrick Henry and Zay Flowers and DeAndre Hopkins, right? We have this offense, and the truth is that we've morphed. We're not the defensive team that we used to be. And so our offense is needed more, and our defense is a little bit more, has a little bit more, that's a little bit more scoring through. So I think we have to recognize that, because our history, it's only been since 1996, but our history has been as a defensive team. And that's just,
well, that's because you had Ray Lewis back in the day.
We had Ray Lewis, we had
that was
Ed
a big
Reed,
thing.
we had
So,
Terrell
yeah,
Suggs, like we had.
But I
Haloti
mean, you
Ngata,
score
like,
40 points, you're an offensive team. Sorry, like you score 40 points, because that's not a thing. You should have been blown out if you weren't an offensive team. But
Right.
what you did show is they could score at will, but you guys could also score almost at will.
Well, except at the end, and that's the
well.
question. Why
So,
can we score all the way through,
Yeah.
and then all of a sudden we start? I don't know what happens. I'm not sure what happened. I would say the offensive coordinator too. I don't know what happens in these circumstances where we're just doing it, and all of a sudden we're not. And again, I recognize that the other teams are making adjustments, but part of coaching, as someone who's never been a coach, I'm recognizing that now. Part of coaching, right, is that it's real easy to be a Monday morning quarterback. This is a Sunday afternoon quarterback, right? Part of coaching, though, is making those adjustments. And I just don't – I feel like we get out-coached sometimes. Again, he has – Harbaugh has done a great job. He's brought in great coordinators. Most of his coordinators that leave to be head coaches other places, right? He does a really good job. But somehow we find ways to lose games that we should win. And
that's how I felt about – I felt that way about the Cowboys. We're playing against the Eagles. Now, the Eagles aren't the same Eagles as last year that won the Super Bowl, because they lost a lot of people, as happens whenever you win a Super Bowl.
Right.
I turned the game off after halftime because I'm old and had to go to sleep for work the next day as well. But we were doing amazing till halftime. We were keeping up neck to neck. We were right there. Didn't score a point in the second half.
By the way, that tells you the difference between status. You said we were doing amazing, and your amazing was we weren't losing badly. We were keeping up. That's your version of amazing. I just want you to know that. Unfortunately, not we were winning. We just weren't losing badly. But go ahead.
We scored first. We scored on our first drive, which is an unusual thing as well. But CeeDee Lamb dropping those 3 or 4 passes, if he caught any one of those passes, I think we're talking about a different ending to that game. Because it was one score. It was one score difference, which means they also didn't do well in the second half. And you can say either team didn't do well, or the defense just stepped up and was able to stop better, and they were better prepared, but the offense didn't adjust on either side.
Right.
And as soon as CeeDee Lamb came back, he went right into practice, which is fantastic. Sounds good. It's a great story, but shouldn't you have already been prepared? You had a good first half. Can you really say that you needed more practice? I don't think that's the answer, but I think that's what people were looking for. Is that you took ownership and you said, I need to do better at catching, because that's what my job is, as my title as a receiver, is to catch the ball. So
very simplified.
I think that's it. I try, make it easy. But
we should CeeDee Lamb, if you listen to this podcast, you should come on.
See how he
you should come on.
Himself,
I know. Come on and have a conversation with Erick about the fact that your job is just catching the ball. I think you might have something different to say. But I agree with you. But I also recognize that I want you to think about you. Right? There's a lot of Cowboy stuff going on. You got a Cowboys class. Geez, my knees. But think about you for a second. Someone who reports to you in life, at work, could say his whole job is to do X, Y, and Z.
Yep.
How did he not do X, Y, and Z well?
Yeah.
And I think the reality is that it's real easy to be on the outside judging people, but sometimes it's hard when you're the person on the inside. You know what I'm saying? And so I don't disagree.
That's true.
I think CD Lamb would say he should have caught those balls. I didn't even watch the game, but I'm just based on what you're saying. I think that the Ravens and John Harbaugh would say they should have won that game.
Mm-hmm.
But we're human beings, and it's hard sometimes to do the things that we know we should do, especially in sports when there's somebody fighting against you. Right, at least in life and work, but hopefully there's nobody fighting. Sometimes it is.
Work there.
Sometimes it is.
Sometimes it feels like
sometimes it is. Wait, can I tell you something funny? So my team does like leadership training, and they needed a last minute fill in for a leadership panel, and so I don't typically do it, but
what's a leadership panel?
Yeah, so I stepped in, and here's what I said. I said,
"What is that? What is a leadership panel?"
Oh, I'm sorry. So we're doing a leadership training for the supervisors and managers, and it's for about 2 hours on one particular day. We have other leaders sort of talk to these newer leaders that are in the class to answer questions. So it's a leadership panel where it's just Q&A. It's just Q&A about, newer leaders.
How do I handle this situation? This came up. What do I do this? How would you handle this situation? Okay,
exactly.
Okay.
I don't remember the question, but here's what I said.
I'm sure this was going to be a good answer. I don't know what you asked me, but I'm going to tell you what my answer is, regardless of what you asked me.
I said, being a leader is like being by the way, the difference between me being on a panel and other people being on a panel is that their people are not in the room. My entire team was essentially in the room.
Oh, that's different.
It's different. Okay. I said, being a leader is like being a parent to toddlers. And there was like a noticeable groan in the room, because my people were all there, and they were toddlers, and then I tried to correct it. I was like, what's like being a parent to teenagers? Another noticeable.
Not better.
Like,
not better.
I thought it was better, bro. I thought it was better.
No.
So then I was like, it's like being a parent to like young adults. Still not better. At some point, I just realized I just put my foot completely in my mouth and had to spend time sort of walking it back. But I thought, listen. But here's the funny part. The funniest part was they, not on purpose, but after the fact, there were times I was just like, this is what I was talking about, right? This thing that's happening right now. This is what I meant when I said being a parent to toddlers. This thing that we're doing right now, you're proving my point. And I don't say that, by the way, to suggest otherwise, because I know sometimes I get frustrated with my supervisor. Sometimes he probably thinks I'm a toddler. It's like, bro, grow up. I'm sure he thinks that sometimes. Like, man, you got to understand the bigger picture, right? And sometimes I think that about my people, but I also think that sometimes it's like, can you handle this on your own? Can you? And I don't mean handle it like deal with it and let it blow. I mean handle it well on your own. So sometimes, being a leader does feel like being a parent to toddlers, because you look at them and you just go, y'all are just creating a mess, and I expect you to be better. Sometimes now it's actually more appropriate as actually teenagers. That's the real. It's not toddlers, because sometimes it feels like toddlers, but I think the more sort of long-term version of it is being a parent to young adults, whether that's teenagers, whether that's 20-year-olds, people who you expect to make the right decisions, be completely reasonable. And then as you engage with them, you just go, okay, there's still some growth that needs to happen here, right? That's what leadership to me is about. I know we just switched to leadership. I don't remember what we were talking about a second ago.
So, what's funny is when I was younger, I was, I probably spent 10, 15 years in retail management.
Mm-hmm.
And people used to ask me, why don't you have kids? And I said, because I have 25 of you guys here.
Mm-hmm.
Or I have 75 of you here. Kids in general, because managing people, it's a different thing. It's a different animal altogether. And there's a reason why a lot of people turn down the opportunity for management. They don't want to deal with what they know are the challenges, because they're one of the challenges. Yeah, I mean,
the same way that people don't have kids.
They go, I don't want to deal with that headache. I don't want to deal with that headache. I've seen my friends with kids, and those are really challenges that I don't want. I'm selfish to an extent. I want my time. I want my freedom. I want my money. I don't want to have to course correct anything. I like my life going the course it is, and kids will disrupt it. And in business, I don't care what that business is. I don't care if it's Smoothie King, if it's Bank of America, if it's a law firm.
Right.
You deal with personalities that you can tie back to kindergarten, which is why they say everything you've ever learned, you learned in kindergarten. You learned in kindergarten, you know? So the kid that was the bully in kindergarten, I bet you is the bully at work. The kid that ate glue in kindergarten is probably making not the great decisions in life.
Right.
And you're having to manage them just like that teacher had to manage that class. And that's the challenge. That's why management isn't for everybody.
No, right.
But it is challenging to manage people.
Yeah, but you still shouldn't call them toddlers in their face.
You know what? I don't think it's wrong. I don't think you were wrong to call them.
I was not wrong.
You were wrong to say call toddlers, teenagers.
But they should have. But I should have been more thoughtful about how they would have received it.
So I don't think you were calling your people toddlers, teenagers, young adults in any of those situations. I think you were equating it, which is the situation that we're in today's world, which is we're too sensitive to stuff that we were never sensitive about before.
Right.
And now everything's offensive. Oh my gosh. Did he just call me a toddler? No, man. I was being metaphorical.
Right.
And you should be adult enough to understand that. But instead, there's probably going to be a call to HR at some point, not with your company, but it's another company. If anyone else gives that example and they're in a team meeting and someone asks you what's the challenges of managing personnel people, and you give that example, someone's calling personnel and saying, he called us all babies.
He called us kids, yeah.
Called us all kids. And that's the reality of today is there's less, I won't say no, there's less critical thinking among adults. And we're looking to be offended and we're looking to be outraged so much faster because we've been insulted for so long that there's a generation that says, I'm not dealing with that anymore. And if anything sounds like impropriety, gives a whisper that it could be insulting, I'm gonna draw offense to it quickly because that's not how I want to be treated. And they don't own the example of what an adult conversation is.
Well, the lack of accountability in general in human beings is crazy. It's just crazy. Huge. Like people don't own their own part of things, you know, and that part just throws me for a loop. Because I spend so much. Listen, one, I accept I believe my self-image of myself is that I accept accountability when it's presented to me. But also, I'm constantly holding myself accountable for things, and I don't differentiate those two things. Right? I can hold myself accountable, and it's okay. But you, as somebody who's not me, can also hold me accountable. And I'm going to try to not approach it differently. I mean, a lot of people do. They'll be like, I hold myself accountable, but if you say something, now I'm going to go come back at you. I'm like, but like, let's be real. You know exactly what you do.
No. So you don't. So here's the problem. I was one of those people. And you and I have had a lot of conversations back and forth about how I would be frustrated and I would get feedback and I would go company to company for different opportunities. And I would get similar feedback. And I would always blame my teams or the manager for overreacting to things. And I think at one point we had a conversation where you said, it seems like the common denominator with all the feedback is you. Which pissed me off, by the way. But it was a big growing point for me because I needed to hear something different. I needed to hear, and a lot of people don't have those people in their lives that will give them honest feedback and give them something critical to think about because they're worried about losing a friend. So their friends that they hang out with reinforce their beliefs and their thoughts.
Oh my gosh. Me. Oh my goodness.
It's them. And they're like, man, your boss sucks. Your people around you suck. That's ridiculous. You need to get out of there. You need to report them because they're wrong. They're not seeing it right. And there's no self-reflection that you could be the problem because you are the hero in your story.
And no peer accountability either.
You're
that person shouldn't be affirming you. They should be going, hey, you need to rethink that, you know?
Right. Because we don't do that. We don't want to hurt our friends. And we think by not being honest with our friends, we're keeping them as friends and we're
still hurting them.
We're feeding into their beliefs. Even though you could say, yeah, I feel that way about you sometimes too, bud. You know? Like I feel like, you irritate me sometimes,
But they
with the
don't
way
say
you
that.
react, but people don't say that to each other because they're worried about hurting the friendship. They're worried about hurting their friend. And really sometimes the truth to their friend would be better than trying to placate your friend and
Right.
trying to make them feel better about the situation. And I hear it time and again. Misery loves company.
Mm-hmm.
And if I'm upset, I want to make you upset at work.
Mm-hmm.
And instead of saying, maybe we could do better with this, maybe the feedback, I got the same feedback from Eric that you got. Are you kidding me? He's telling me I need to work harder. And it's like, if I just change this attitude, like I'm not him. I'm not thinking like he does. And instead of saying, wow, he has the experience, he understands how business is, he's been around a while,
Mm-hmm.
maybe I do need to adjust some of this. Instead, I want to say he's a dick.
Right.
He doesn't know. He doesn't know me. He doesn't understand me. He's telling me to speak differently. He's telling me not to be me. He's telling me I can't be this person. You
Well,
know?
wait, can I say something real quick?
Yeah.
Something that I often tell people, and I usually tell them, I agree with everything what you're saying, by the way. And I usually tell this in groups versus individually, because individually it hurts, it stings a little bit more. But what I will say is, as your supervisor, as your organization, we don't pay you to be who you are. You are who you are for free 24 hours a day. We pay you to be who the organization needs you to be. Right.
That's
So
tough.
we
Yeah.
do, that's
Yeah.
why I don't say it individually, because that's really
Yeah.
hard as a person. Like if I say, Eric, I don't pay you to be here, that comes off differently than if I say it to a group of 20, 30, 50 people, right? We don't pay you to be who you are. That's who you are every day for free. We pay you to be who the organization needs you to be, which is some version of who you are. We didn't hire you to be a different person, but we hired you to be a good version of you. And the good version of you may mean you have to do some adjustments. May mean that you don't react the same way that you would naturally react. It may mean that you make some different decisions that you would do if you weren't at work. And that's okay, because I make different decisions than I would at work than I would, than I would at home.
Yeah.
That's just right. They don't pay me to be who I am, because who I am is a sarcastic a-hole, like legit, 100% sarcastic a-hole. I it, it I would cause so many lawsuits to my organization if I was just who I was, but that's not who they pay me to be. They pay me to be who they need me to be, and who they need me to be is a more measured version of my natural self. And I think sometimes people don't understand that. They think
Yeah.
you're trying to change who I am. I'm like, no,
Yeah.
you can be who you are. You just can't be that full, unfiltered person at work,
Yeah.
right? Because the person who you are may be the person who curses all the time. Yeah, maybe you can't do that. That may be the person who wears shorts. Yeah, maybe you can't do that, right? There are lots of things that are unique to your person that just because we say you can't do that at work doesn't mean we don't want who you authentically are. We just need you to have some edits, some adjustments to who you authentically are. And sometimes people struggle with that in a major way, right? Because they feel like it's some affront to their unique, personhood. And that's not what we're trying to say. We're just trying to say that, listen, we all have flaws, and we need you to temper down some of those flaws and to work on some of those things that need to be better so that the organization can benefit. Because we're paying you not to come in as who you are, but we're paying you to come in as what we need you to be.
It's funny. I had a similar conversation years ago with a lady who was frustrated because she was a top performer, but she wasn't being viewed for any promotion. Top performer, not being viewed for promotion. And I explained to her that I'm an introvert, paid to be an extrovert. Because an introvert would not manage this department well, would
I
not
love that. I
manage
love that. I love that.
these people well. And I recognize that, because if you saw me at a restaurant, if you saw me at a party or gathering,
Mhm.
I'm the guy in the corner sitting on the side watching and observing what everyone else is doing, but really probably not participating too much. That's just who I am naturally. But when you see me in meetings with 15 to 20 people on a Zoom call or in person, I have to be a different person than I am naturally. And that's because the company paid me to be that person. My
Right.
company paid me to bring you guys together. The company's paid me to talk to you about their changes and the things that are going to affect them. And the way that you communicate as if you're talking to your friends at home or on the phone.
Right.
And And that communication is not going to work in this office environment with the way that you want to deliver information. And I'm telling you, this is what the people are looking for, because I understand what they look at during interviews. And her takeaway from this is she was a younger black woman, and she thought I was telling her to be a middle-aged white man. And she complained about it. She complained about that feedback to my bosses to say, Erick's telling me that I need to sound white in order to be promoted here. And that's not fair. And we went over the whole conversation because my boss called me into the office with her and said, tell me about this conversation you had. And I explained it exactly how I said it. And he's like, Erick's not wrong here. It is how we believe and trust that you're going to communicate with people and how you're going to deliver information that represents the company here.
Right.
So he's saying, be who you are. And because you're a top performer, you know how to get the job done. But we need to tweak a little bit about how you are going to deliver the information to the people that I tell you to deliver. Because I have to believe that what I'm telling you, and I'm not white, I'm Hispanic. I want you to deliver the message similar to how I passed on to the rest of the managers, how this message needs to be passed on. And that's where he's trying to communicate with you.
So here's the thing, and I I agree with you in terms of the final sort of assessment. But the challenge is there's some historical assessment here, right? And I'm not I'm not good with historical assessment, but for a long time there has been a trend that what is right, is white. Right.
Yes.
I
understand
like
that.
The culture of corporate America is a white person's natural comfort level. Right.
Yes.
And so what does tend to happen sometimes is all of a sudden, just because you guys are in charge, it's because white people, let me clear, I want to be unambiguous, are in charge. Well, but that's not just speaking to you, right? Because we're doing a podcast, right? So just because white people are in charge doesn't mean that the only culture that is relevant, that should be tolerated, understood, and forward facing is the white version of culture, white culture, right? White American culture. That Black American culture can be forward facing, can be the thing that you see, and it can be very different. And so I think that sometimes what Black people see is you are asking me to not be who I am in my natural world. But to your point, there is still the ability to say, as the manager, as the CEO, as the organization, say, this is how we handle things here. And there has to be the recognition that people are culturally different, while also saying that we do have a corporate culture. And while we as Black people may often want the corporate culture to be a little bit more inclusive and understanding of our natural culture, and I think there's room for growth there, I also think that there should be an understanding that corporate culture, it still gets to be determined by those at the top of that corporation, at the top of that organization. They get to determine what that is. And if what you do doesn't fit, you have to recognize that. It's a weird balance, right? It's a weird balance to fight against the inclusion of who you are as a person into what that corporate culture is, while recognizing that they still get to make that final decision. And so that's
Correct.
a hard place to be. And I think that sometimes what happens in these conversations is we don't have both conversations. You just explained you had the one conversation, which is the corporate culture. This is what we do. This is what we don't do.
Yeah.
But there wasn't a recognition of the fact that your corporate culture doesn't require you to change very much. But your corporate culture requires me to change a lot. And so I think that even just a recognition of that, even if you don't change your corporate culture, the recognition of the fact that, okay, it is a lot easier for me because there's less adjustment for me as a white male than for you as a Black female, of what you have to adjust from your natural way of being, the way that you conduct yourself on an everyday place, right? And so I think that's part of it. And I think that people would like things to be black and white. And I don't mean black and white race-wise. I mean, just clear.
Simple and clear. Yeah.
Simple and clear, right? And so I think that that people say things in a way to try to make it simple and clear, because having these nuanced conversations is very difficult. Having these conversations about, okay, this is how we expect people to engage with each other, because this is a corporate culture, this is our values, whatever the case is. But we recognize that just because your natural volume is louder, natural volume, your everyday volume is louder, doesn't mean that there's something negative about it. Right. And part of what we have to do is to make sure other people understand that. Other people understand that natural volume is not indicative. You're using your own filter of what you grew up with and what you understood to determine whether or not natural volume, what the volume should be. But everybody's, what they grew up with, what they understood is different. And so I think helping people understand that while embracing the variations that we have, you know what I'm saying, I think is going to be important. And that's a hard thing to do. It's a really hard thing to do, to have both of those conversations, but I think both of those conversations have to be had.
So as a white guy, I'm going to say this in a way that I don't mean to be offensive, and I'm trying to understand the right wordage and verbiage, so I'm going to need your help here. But you speak
wrong.
As a black man.
You're wrong. Whatever you said. No,
you speak as a black man, not like you're from the city.
Ooh,
okay.
Well,
What I'm saying is there you don't use a lot of slang when you speak. But
let me tell you why that is misguided. Why that's misguided is because you are assuming that people from the city are essentially monolithic. They behave and talk and act in the same way.
I'm going to go back to Ebonics. Remember when Ebonics was a thing?
Yeah, well, hold on.
I'm trying to get to that realm. I'm trying to get to that realm.
Because I'll listen.
Because you don't use, and I don't know if Ebonics is even still a thing that people talk about, or I remember it was a thing a while ago.
Right.
But that was the explanation for how a different culture speaks regularly amongst their people, and it's something that wasn't allowed or acceptable to move forward in corporate America. But it had to be explained that this is how it is, and that's the difference I'm talking about here. Is somewhere along the line you chose, this is not how I was going to speak and sound. And maybe you do around your friends and such. You have never around me. And yeah, we use different slang when we're around and behind closed doors and stuff, but it's different as everything would be. But you understood, I think you called it a mask one time. You had to put on a mask when you're in corporate America, and the way you speak is different, but you had to do it enough that it was clear you could make your point across without using slang and other Ebonic phrases, to lack of a better word, I'm sorry, to get your point across as you were growing in your career.
So yes, but what I think is important to understand, Eric, is that I grew up in a unique circumstance that allowed me to gain that understanding. Right. Okay. And so my circumstance was I grew up in Columbia, Maryland, which is a very diverse community, which was very accepting of the differences between people. And so while I recognized that different sort of places I would be in would have different levels of tolerance for who I might be unfiltered, therefore I needed to adjust. That didn't necessarily mean that was the right thing to be. I just understood that was where were in the world. And I think, and by the way, I'm going to give a quick shout out to, remember the person I mentioned who gave me that grandfather cup, Nicole? She and I had a conversation recently, and part of what a movement that she's working on is this movement of helping people who need to understand the ability to be your authentic self while being able to navigate in other spaces, which is a difficult thing to be. I think the thing to understand is that I came to understand that ability, why the ability to navigate was different. But in certain spaces, the way that people interpret that is that you are in fact asking me to shed who I am at my core, right? Who I am at
Yes.
my core.
Yeah.
And so, and that is something that, if that's what you think you're being asked to do, if that's what you're being asked to do, let's just assume that, take that as a fact for that. If that's what you're being asked to do, that is not acceptable, to shed who you are at your core. But I think that sometimes people misunderstand that enabling yourself to navigate in other spaces that are not necessarily always conducive to who you are at your core doesn't mean you have to shed your core. It does mean that you have to code switch, right? You have to change how you communicate and how you present yourself in those spaces, so that you can advance your own personal cause from a professional standpoint and the cause of a group of people that you may be representing, whether you intend to represent them or not, within those spaces. And so I think that that's part of what sometimes I think our people have to understand, especially our young people have to understand, is that you don't have to shed who you are in order to develop the capability to code switch, to develop the capability to maybe put a mask on occasionally, in order to navigate those spaces, so that you can create space for those that come after you. And so I think that's part of the challenge, is that people think it's all or nothing. They think it's either I'm authentically who I am, or I'm this sellout person who can navigate these other spaces. And I think that you can be who you are and still develop the skill, right? And I think one of the things, I think in my conversation with Nicole, I talked about the fact that NBA players, I'm gonna use that as an example, right? Very much, mostly African American, but NBA players, if somebody says something they don't like, or in real life, they may tell them what's up. I saw LeBron James. I saw a video from LeBron James. He was golfing, right? And I'm going to use pretty, real
Graphic
language
words here.
Yeah, real language here. But language that we don't typically use with each other. You'll hear what I'm saying. But LeBron James hit a good golf shot. He's learning to golf. He's going to the 4-way golf. Like Steph Curry's been golfing for a while, but LeBron James appears to be new. He hit a good golf shot. He was like, "Yeah, motherfucker, that's what I'm talking about, nigga." He was like, he was going off. He was asking, "Niggas, how you do that shit, nigga?" Right? And so he would do that whole thing, right? And that may be who you are with your people. But my guess is, if he's sitting at a podium after a game, he'd be like, "This is what yeah, nigga, that's what I'm gonna do." He's not gonna say that, right? Because he's in his professional environment, right? When you're golfing, you're with your people, right? I mean, generally speaking, it's
Sure.
a social thing, right? So he was not filtered, and that's who he is. But you don't hear that from LeBron James very much. He's
Right.
one of the most successful athletes ever, and he's still playing the game. One of the most successful. And so he doesn't. So when he's on the court, he doesn't do all the things that he would do normally. When he's at a podium, representing whatever organization he's playing for, he doesn't do that. But that's who he is by himself. And many, I'll go with black people at this point, that's who we are. But I use all sorts of words and terminology that I would not use in a professional environment.
Sure.
And that doesn't mean that I am shedding. I am ashamed. I am not who I am authentically. That simply means that I recognize that every part of me, who I am naturally am, is not necessarily for every part. The same way that when you're in a relationship, I have lots of thoughts that I do not share with my wife. That doesn't mean I'm not married. Right. That just means that, listen, every part of me is not conducive to marriage.
Yeah.
Right? You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And so you have to make adjustments. You have to make choices in your life, and so so I think that some people struggle with that. And I think we should probably have Nicole on this podcast at some point, because I think she could provide a very unique perspective on that she has really been sort of focused in that area about how people can do that. I feel like I rambled a little bit.
No, I don't think you rambled at all. But what I am curious on your perspective is, that's an easier conversation for you to have with one of your team members that you're coaching,
mm-hmm.
that's trying to get promoted and step up, and they need to make a change in the way
mm-hmm.
they communicate.
Right.
Than me, as a white guy, having that conversation. So I'm going to ask you, how would you recommend somebody, whether I'm talking to Hispanic who's using a lot of slang, or a black person using a lot of slang, and they do great at their job, and they're trying to understand why they never got promoted, and I'm taking over a new team, and these people are still wanting to get moved up. How do I have that conversation without being called into HR?
So I think there's two parts of it. One, there's still two conversations that have to happen. One is what culture are we promoting here? And the other conversation is why are you, what do you maybe need to do in order to be able to fit into this culture a little bit more? So part of it is, why would them using, this is for you as the leader. And I'm not asking you to answer this in real time, but I'm saying, why would them using slang mean they can't get promoted? And is that something that you want to perpetuate? Do you think they should not be promoted because they're using slang? If not, then the part of your job as a leader is to help forge a culture that doesn't limit them because of that, right? So that's the first thing you have to do is to work on that part of it. If you don't think that somebody who speaks slang shouldn't be promoted, right, because they speak slang, then you have to help change that culture so that that doesn't happen, or it happens less, right? It takes time. And then the other thing you have to say is, but in reality, here's where we are right at this exact moment. And in this exact moment, it hurts you when you do that. It probably shouldn't. I wish this world was more just. I wish this world was more understanding and forgiving of who we all are. But as of right now, it's not. And so if you want to move forward, here are some adjustments that I would encourage you to consider making. Not because I think they're the thing that you need to do, but because I know the world that we're living in. I know the company that we're working in. And because of that, we have to be thoughtful about all this. And here are some of the ways that I have adjusted as a human being in order to ensure that I could maximize my opportunities to provide for my family and advance in this company. And so sometimes, given that personal example, I will tell you that you're using race, but this happens with women, right? And so I have had this experience when I've had conversations with women. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how exactly how women are treated differently in the workplace. I have some inclinations because I've been told and because I've been taught and because I read up, right? And so they are often objectified. They are often talked around, right? They're often not heard, right? So they could say something and it doesn't get traction until a man says it. Man could say the exact same thing. Woman could say, we should consider, adding a survey to the end of the thing. And they're like, I don't know about that, it's blah, 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 blah. And then 5 minutes later, a man says, we should consider adding a survey. That's a great idea, John. We should do that. And the woman's like, what the fuck? Like, I just said that shit, right? And because they become sensitive to it, they start noticing these patterns, right? That we would notice, right? As men, we won't often notice unless we are acutely attuned to it, right? So the same thing with microaggressions, right? When it comes to, Black people or minorities may notice these microaggressions that majorities may not notice, right? And that's not because they're insensitive, it's because they're just not attuned to it. Because once it happens a lot, you start just paying more and more and more attention to it. And now all of a sudden, it just sort of stands out to you. So I say that to say that what I have done with women that I've worked with, recognizing that I don't understand what it's like to be a woman in the workplace, I don't understand the challenges that they face, is I acknowledge that. And I say, listen, I know that there are additional challenges on your plate that you have to deal with that I have no idea about. One, I'm going to ask you to help me understand it, because the only way that I can help you is by understanding those things, right? But two, what I'm going to tell you is, in this environment that we're in, I'm going to give you some advice about what you can do to help your cause so that you can move forward, so that you can overcome those particular things. And so I think you have to have those parallel conversations. You have to say, I don't understand and I don't know, but I'm recognizing that it exists, right? And that recognition of its existence is a major important fact, because lots of people, Eric, do not recognize that it exists. They pretend like it's not a thing. And that feels like marginalization to the person being marginalized. I know I just used the verb and the noun sort of in with each other, but that's what it feels like, right? It feels like, okay, so you're acting like my experience doesn't matter because you don't acknowledge it. So acknowledge that it exists, even when you don't understand all the parts of it and all the implications of it. Just acknowledging that it exists and acknowledging that you are on a journey trying to understand it better, and asking them to partner with you on that journey.
Okay.
And then having a conversation of, but we're still here. Because here's the thing: women, minorities, trans people, gay people, right? All the people that are the others at different times in society. They recognize that this society is not where we want it to be. So your acknowledgement that this society is not where it should be, this company is not where it should be, this organization is not where it should be, this department is not where it should be, it's not going to like be some sort of crazy revelation to them. I'm like, oh my gosh, when we need to fix it. That's what we live. We know it's not. But you recognizing that it's not matters to us. And so if you're the person in power, if you're a white man in power, and you recognize that, hey, we're not where we should be on XYZ issue. And I'm going to work to help us move along and move in the right direction. But in the meantime, I recognize that we're not there, and I want you to be successful. And when I say successful, I don't mean doing good work, because you're doing good work already. But I want you to get recognized for that good work. I want you to get promoted because you do that good work. And so here are some things that I think can be done to help that happen while I, in parallel, work on helping to change the culture, helping to change the reality of, of the fact that we're not where we should be. I think is the way to have that conversation.
Okay. I can appreciate that. And that's helpful, because I've probably did half of what you said, but probably missed out on some of the important cues that you're talking about. So,
and I think Bernard would agree. You do about half of what you're supposed to, and you miss out on the
I think most. But I mean, it is different managing people who aren't you.
Yeah.
It just is, and you don't realize the challenges that some people go through. You just think hard work is going to pay off.
Yeah.
And that's what we're always been told, is hard work.
Yeah,
pays
but
off.
for lots of people, it does pay off.
Yeah.
What I think people don't miss sometimes is that for certain segments of society, it doesn't pay off in the same way, right? It's not a one-to-one payoff.
I can't have you speaking this way to our clients. I can't have you speaking this way to our other team members.
Why can't you?
Yeah.
Because
it sounds unprofessional. When people are looking for this,
But should we be redefining what unprofessional sounds like?
I don't think so. I don't know.
That's what we're talking about right now.
Yeah,
like we should be redefining what unprofessional sounds like.
I don't know if Nicki Minaj can go into a law firm and sound like she's competent to manage your situation because of how she's going to come off to the judge when she speaks.
Yeah,
that's
the current reality.
That's the reality.
But the question, but what I'm pressing you on is the idea that you should be working to change that judge's perspective and that law firm's perspective and all those sorts of things. Because listen, all of us minorities, women, black people, sexual minorities, gender minorities, we need white straight men to advocate and to be allies. So this is how you can be an ally. You can be an ally by making space for us to be our true selves. And so what I'm going to say that we are not, in fact, that in fact your professional, right, is not the true professional, because that's a white man's version of professional. But that's not everybody's version of professional. And so what you have to do is create space for other people's version of professional. Where you talk professional in this particular situation, in this particular conversation, to be considered and viewed. It's going to take time, but you have to have that conversation, because when we have that conversation, we look like we're just not trying to be professional. When you have that conversation, you as a white man have that conversation with other white men, now they can't accuse you of being self-serving and just trying to be unprofessional. They now go, okay, well then if there's other white guys, I know they don't say it in their head, that there's other white guys saying it, but that's what happens. There's other white guys saying it. Maybe there's something I should consider. That's why we need those allies and those.
So I believe I am a strong ally for those things, but I'm also saying.
But you didn't sound like a second ago when you judged as unprofessional.
I'm saying professionalism sounds professional. So if I'm talking to someone from Appalachian Mountains, white guy, not using full words because it abbreviates all the words that they use, mumbling while they're talking, but making a good point, is still not going to be accepted in certain realms when it comes to sounding like what sounds professional and how you address a situation.
All right, so here's what I want you to think about. I'm going to use sports for a second because I think sports transcends a lot of things, right? Okay. And so I want you to think about the fact that I'm going to use Lamar Jackson. I'm a big fan of Lamar Jackson. And Lamar Jackson, I know he went to Louisiana. I forget exactly where he's from. I think he's from Florida, but he has definitely a dialect to him when he speaks, right? And so, and by the way, I think at some point in my undergraduate studies, I studied cultural linguistics and understood that everything is just about perception. It's all about where you are from.
It is perception.
Yes.
100% right.
So,
Yes.
but what happens is if you see Lamar Jackson articulate what he thinks about from a football standpoint, talks about how he breaks down plays, talks about how he looks at the defense and breaks it down, but you constantly hear it in the Lamar Jackson version of dialect, right? Which is I think Florida, I think from Florida, wherever he's from. It's a very unique dialect. You hear that at some point, you start disassociating the dialect from uneducated, from the negative. You may go, I wish you would have said it differently, but you start going, wait, he's saying some incredibly intelligent, insightful things, even though he's saying it in this dialect that I might normally sort of associate with unintelligence. And so you get sort of you put yourself in a position where you understand that that dialect does not mean what you think it is, but it requires a lot of interactions to come to that conclusion. What you can do as a white man, right, is to help people to expedite that process. So I don't have to hear it and have to overcome my own personal biases for a year before I decide that, you know what, because he speaks like that doesn't mean he's unintelligent. You can help us understand that. You can talk about those things. You can go, hey, have we ever thought about listening to just what the person's saying and taking away for a second how they're saying it? Because we may realize that this person's smarter than us. And because we're so biased about how it's said, we miss the jewels and the nuggets and the information that's being conveyed. Those are the sort of conversations I think that you can have, right? While you're saying to them that, hey, we're still there where people hear how you say it and they still make judgments. So consider making some adjustments as you're doing it so that they can hear you better, right? Unless you're trying to be the force of change, right? If you're somebody who's trying to be the force of change, you could go, I'm going to purposefully not change who I am. And over time, let them see that what I bring to the table, what I share, what I talk about, that I am, in fact, an incredibly smart, intellectual, professional person, right? Then that's another way to fight it. But I'm saying in your conversations with them, when they're trying to go, I don't understand why I'm not being promoted. I don't understand why people are viewing me that way. It's your job to help them see why people are viewing them that way while not invalidating that they get to still be who they are, right? And you have to fight to make other people see that, you know what, because somebody talks with a strong accent, because somebody talks with a particular dialect, because they drop their R's, right? Or for my friend Nicole, right, who is from Baltimore, and the O's turn into U's, right? Just because that's the case doesn't mean they're not. Because I will tell you that Nicole is one of the smartest, most insightful people you will ever meet in your entire life.
Yeah.
But she speaks like she's from Cherry Hill in Baltimore, right? And so if you just judge based
I don't
on
know Cherry Hill in Baltimore. I don't know what that means, but it sounds like what I said about the city.
Yeah, but if you just judge it on a dialect, you'll just ignore it, and you will not hear all of the gems that she drops. But if you can take that, and so that's part of what I think your job is as an ally, is to help others understand that. Take a moment and get past that for a second and listen to what's being said. You may be surprised at what you hear.
Okay.
Right. Help people have those moments. That's what you can do. And that will help slowly change the culture while giving them, in the short term and the long term, the opportunity to continue to progress in their career. It's a hard thing. But most people choose one or the other. They fight the thing of I shouldn't have to change, or they fight the this is unjust. But they don't say we can do both. We can fight the culture and change the culture slowly while we're also
acknowledging this is unjust.
Yeah,
it
is hard. It is hard.
You know, the thing I know the thing you're talking about with women in general, but I grew up in a woman-dominated industry. You know, I mean, being in retail for so long, it is a woman-dominated. Most of my bosses, my managers, were all women for the most part, and so I've always had a big respect for how they view things, how they handle things, stress, being a mom, being at work, working crazy hours, and still getting all those things done. And that's been an easy thing for me to connect with for
Right.
whatever reason, because that's just what I've always seen. And the way that people communicate has always been my biggest challenge as to helping, because I feel like I am an advocate in a number of areas, and I do want people to succeed and do the best, because I know how good they are. I know that if they're doing this job well, this job is not easy, whatever that field might be, whether I'm in banking or whether I'm in retail or wherever the case may be, they're a leader, but their style is I feel sometimes holding them back, and I want to help push them forward. And I've always been hesitant to go down this path ever since that one negative situation that I had where I tried to advise somebody the best I knew how to advise them, but I didn't use a lot of the techniques that you just spoke about. So I think that's really insightful, and that's helpful is acknowledging a lot more than I was willing to do before, because again, I was trying to connect and relate in a way that I thought they would think I was disingenuous coming from a white guy, whereas my background has always been very open, very understanding. I mean, my very eclectic group of friends, and the people that I hang out with are not like me.
Yeah, and I can attest that at the very least you have one black friend. You do. Like, so when people say, I got a black friend, you do have a black friend.
I always get to say, I got one guy.
I got a black friend. So. Yeah, you do. You got at least one, man.
I don't even have to say that you're black. All I have to do is say I got a friend of mine named Bish. And they're like, oh, Bish. Okay. Yeah,
would you call him? So,
yeah.
So I will tell you, and I know we got to wrap this up. I will tell you that I think that one of the things that we should start doing is finding some challenges that people are having, because we're talking about the challenges that we're having, but some challenges that people are having, and sort of chopping those up on this, through this conversation as well, because I do think it is hard for people to do, and I do think that people can get sort of burned. They can feel like they got burned at certain points and feel sort of skittish to try to address those things. And I think we might be in a unique position to help people be able to address these things, these leadership challenges that they may encounter, throughout their leadership journey and throughout their management.
I think that's a great idea, because I think we are in a comfort zone where we can ask the uncomfortable questions that others are scared to ask because they may not have the same circle. Yeah. And they're taking the feedback from their boss that so-and-so just complained on you.
And it's so easy to get canceled nowadays, right? That you're just like, you're trying not to get canceled, right? So
I don't want to
you're
say
not
the
even
wrong
willing
thing.
to have that conversation, because you're like, in having it, I might get canceled, right? So I do think we can provide some people an opportunity. So
I think it's a great idea, and I think this is where we continue down that path of leadership challenges, and how do we coach and advise along the way. And I think this is something that a lot of people could learn from and could benefit from, as well as you and I.
Yeah, we'll definitely learn. So speaking of coaching and advising, Eric, who is, as we close this podcast episode, I'm going to get the numbers wrong, but I think it's 5, episode 5 out. Who are your sponsors?
Well, right now, Erick Richey Consulting has been doing pretty good, but always open to different opportunities for sure. But that's who's helping me on this side right now.
Excellent. And for my side, I'm sponsored by, I would like to stay married forever. So I'm sponsored by Terica, my wife. I'm not trying to put you as you're sponsored by Berna too. But no, I'm sponsored by Elevate with Bish Bates. If you would like to have your folk, you'd like to elevate what you do, you would like to improve the way that you engage with your people and have your people motivated, connect with Elevate with Bish Bates. The other thing we're sponsored by is the GMC collection. The GMC collection. We now have a 3rd sale. I don't know where these sales are coming from, because it was not happening back in the day, but it's happening now, and we haven't released this podcast, so clearly it's not happening from the 3 people that have listened to this podcast. But Elevate the GMC collection on Etsy. Please get you your shirt. If you have a person in your family that is your superhero, we have a shirt to celebrate them. So the GMC collection on Etsy. And then finally, we're sponsored by Sweet Drinks United. If you need a hella sweet drink, you know what I'm saying? By the way, you see my cup says hers. That's because anyway. If you need a hella sweet drink like vodka and amaretto and limoncello, or pineapple vodka and Malibu rum and orange juice. If you need diabetes while you trying to get drunk, then come to Sweet Drinks R Us. I don't know if that's a real thing.
You don't have to be drunk. You can just want to be relaxed.
We're not
enjoy your
drunk. It's a
beverage.
one drink.
Yeah, you can enjoy your beverage.
Yeah,
So,
enjoy your beverage. So, look, man, it's always good to talk to you, man. I appreciate having the conversation. Look forward to chatting with you again next week. I will say go Cowboys. I will say go Ravens. I will root for both of our teams, and hopefully we end up with some success, something positive to talk about next week. Because this past week was a little bit rough for both. It
was for both of us, but hopefully this week it looks to rebound. So let's have a good one.
Yes, absolutely. All right, man.
You take care. Have a great week, man.
See you next week.
Later.
Bye.
You've been listening to On Second Thought with Erick, Richey, and Bish Bates, where it's never too late to rethink, rewind, and revisit the conversation. If you laughed, learned, or had your own On Second Thought moment, go ahead and subscribe, share, and leave us a review. We want to hear your thoughts. Even if you change them later, follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok at On Second Thought Show and join the conversation. Until next time, keep thinking, keep growing, and don't be afraid to say, you know what? On second thought,